You know, we're live there.
You're live.
Right. So again, for the YouTube, welcome to Rise of the Moors. Again, appreciate everyone who tuned in yesterday on the House of Ram, on their Facebook and in person. I love talking to the people in person, answering their questions, because that's what this is about. Not sitting behind the screen, talking in a room, saying, I know this and I know that. That's not what this is about. Just because you're talking don't mean you're active. Because our people will be talking all the dang time and accomplish nothing. So, I'm going to put the Rights of Indigenous people in the chat, in the Facebook chat, and the YouTube chat. Seems like the chat goes up. Peace, everyone. Peace, peace, peace. So, before I do that, before I go into the document, I'm going to go into the things we read at every meeting. That's why every meeting. And I'm going to start with caveat emptor on this side. Moors are men, upright, independent, and fearless, who care for their loved ones and follow the prophet to a destiny which is not uncertain nor unknown. That destiny is our free national government. They are fortified by the incredible doctrine built upon love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It is therefore folly, foolish, at its greatest heights for smelly culprits with their insidious plans to invade such a realm. The energy of this movement doesn't tolerate these forms of people. They try, but their own bad planning brings down wrath upon their heads like the sword old David had. That bad planning is their bad plan. Intrigue and scurrilous cunning find a difficult path to travel within the ranks of the Moors. This is so because the Moorish movement has been well planned by Prophet Noble Ali, whose latent powers are abundant, unknown, and may be called into action as a matter of defense at any moment. And when you study Noble Ali brought, he's a genius. Noble Ali knows the people within his ranks who are interested. They are the vanguard of the movement as the Moorish hordes increase here in America. All of the Moors are active, not passive. A member's interest can only be in one direction, and having traveled over the road years before, the prophet knows where every member is along the road. A few feet below is another road, where schemers work, where traders grin, and culprits bask in the sun. They think they're on the same road with true Moors, but the Moors are high above on a pinnacle where they might view the destructionists as they fall for the last time, and their bones bleach in the sultry midday sun. I get goosebumps every time I read this. Hungry scavengers flying high, catch scent, devour who's crying out, caveat emptor, cast out the dead carcass. The Moors high above see these plotters purveyor the worst that exists, hurl themselves downward on their own works as the hawks. Caveat emptor. Love it. Love it. To be proclaimed at every meeting. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they're working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so that they may take charge of the situation. I've notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That's why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, trying to shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and ability. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without either prophet being head. It has been proven by my works, which I've performed in the past few years. To the members of the Moorish Temple of America, this is the instruction from your prophet, Noble Ali. Be faithful to your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you'll be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is on now, but the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I am Ali. That's why many hearts have been turned to stone. Many have eyes to see but cannot see, ears to hear but cannot hear. These two would be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving. They are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. Can you hear me? But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, or sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah will bless you for your good work. Peace. Prophet warns all Muslims to be ready in every meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their cotton button, cease wearing the turban and fez, and return to the state where the prophet found them. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet, Noble Dwelling, and if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Peace. Noble Dwelling. Any comments on that?
He's a freaking genius.
He is a genius.
Everything, and it was crazy because Abundance said it yesterday. He's a genius. Yeah. Everything we're coming against and everything, all the obstacles we're facing, he already made a remedy for it. Yep. He already gave us the answers. Yep. The whole thing's laid out. All we have to do is act on it. Yep. He said, I brought you everything it takes to save a nation. Take it and save yourselves. But for some reason, we still think he's going to come back as like a fairy and save us. You know, he said, save yourself. Man. But that's just because these so-called Supreme Grand Sheiks, these so-called Grand Sheiks, and these so-called Sheiks aren't doing their job. So you know what? Huh? I'm sorry. Somebody in the comment section said dozens of indigenous rights defenders have been killed this year, but the world looks the other way. Let us not let them pass in vain. We have to support this document, otherwise they pass for nothing. Yeah. Pretty sure they had a message. Yeah, so don't use that to make you fearful. Yeah, don't let them die in vain. Yeah, I mean, when you read the Quran, it says death is not an enemy to man. It's just, you know, when your job is done, Allah just cut the cords that bind you there and you go home. We should be happy for that. Mm-hmm. They don't got to deal with this BS down here. Somebody said, what's the topic of discussion? United Nations Rights of Indigenous People. Yeah. What book is that you're reading from? I wasn't reading the book. I was reading the things to be read at every meeting that the prophet said should be read at every meeting. And now I'm about to read the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which I just printed the PDF that I got online that I dropped in the Facebook chat and the YouTube chat. That's what I'm about to read. It's also on the board. Is that up on risemores.org? Do we put that post that up yet? Yeah, that's in the yeah. You can also get it from there. Now, the reason I want to talk about this document is the same reason why I wanted to talk about it before. Because as we're waking up, we need to realize that, so I'll push this point. We need to realize that not all of this struggle is on our backs. The Europeans are obligated to help us.
But if you want, also the Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People and other documents, go to rightsandmores.org. I'm going to put it in both chats. The free study material that we put on the site. So again, as we're waking up, don't think like, oh my God, there's so much that only we have to do, or it's just all on my back, it's all on our backs. That's not what it is. All of us need to participate in this, yes, and it'll make it a lot easier. But then when you read this, you'll see that these Europeans are obligated to help us.
Somebody said rights of indigenous people only applicable when one is connected to a nation that has adopted it. My nation's adopted it, and so has the United States. So,
how can you adopt a declaration?
By accepting it.
That's not adopting it.
No.
Oh. I declare that the light's on. Do you have to accept that?
No.
But the light's still on. It doesn't matter what you adopt or what you don't adopt. I declare that the sun is hot. What does that have to do with any nation accepting that?
It's still signed. It's still signed.
It doesn't. It alone doesn't do anything. People need to get that clear. It alone does not do anything unless the people enforce their rights. We're just using this as a study tool because most of our people don't know what their rights are. This is informing them what their rights are. It has nothing to do with who adopted it and who didn't.
Somebody said endorsing and adopting are not synonymous.
Now we're getting into a specific detail that's kind of irrelevant. Because I don't care if the United States didn't adopt this. If there's 1,000 more saying one thing, that one thing is going to happen. I don't care who adopted what.
True.
So if we get out of that mindset of we ought to wait until someone approves something, stop. Because that's what's stopping us. Well, we got to wait because no. Wait for what? Turn down for what? You get what I'm saying? So even that argument is kind of like, it's minute. Don't have it.
Yeah, because it's the will of the people.
Matter. Yes, it's the will. The prophet said himself, it is the will of Allah alone that guides the destiny of the Moorish Islamic national movement. What is the will of Allah? The will of the people. Period. And if you don't believe me, read the Holy Quran of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science and you'll see it. When Jesus talks about when your will is conforming with Allah's will, then the resurrection is possible. So that means your will is the will of Allah. So as long as you're conforming to your higher consciousness, then whatever you're trying to manifest or whatever is possible. Now, what does that have to do with anyone adopting anything? Because didn't their brother yesterday at the House of Rain talk about how in the South they were trying to take down the statue of Christopher Columbus? And then about 1,000 Italians were like, no, don't take it down. And since they said that, it wasn't taken down. What does that have to do with anyone adopting anything? It's the will of the people demanded that they leave the statue up. Our problem is we fell from our higher consciousness, and just like we talked about in the Circle 7, our will dropped to a sluggish will. So now we're all slow and don't want to do anything. And then we keep drugging ourselves up. And then we keep using unhealthy coping methods to deal with our pain or our struggle. Instead of focusing on the remedy. Because the universe is mental. So whatever you think is going to happen. So if you just keep thinking, oh, I'm struggling, I'm going to struggle, then you're going to stay in that. If you think, okay, I'm trying to get free, then you're going to be mentally free. Which is what the prophet came to do. Free us from mental slavery. Because the universe is mental. So, now, back to this document. Our people need to know about this document. I mean, basic common sense will tell you if your land was taken, the person who took it has to give it back, right? But if I steal your hat and then you don't ever come to me for the hat back,
Mm-hmm.
you abandon it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter the resolution. I can adopt the I'm going to give all the hats I stole back resolution. But if the owners don't come and say, hey, give me this stuff, I'm going to give it crap back.
Mm-hmm.
So the United Nations signed this so that activists, nationalists, can have a tool to use to teach the people.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Inquisitionists have been keeping us stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because everything in there is basically birthright, so you don't need anybody's permission to.
Exactly. Everything in here is birthright. Everything in here is based on reparations. And everything in here basically says we have an obligation to our nation, and so do they. The Europeans have an obligation to our nation. Because they're the ones who dismantled it. So when you read it,
it's really nature's law.
Yeah, it is. So I'll read the, I guess it's the preamble. I'll read the preamble. It says, affirming also that all peoples contribute to the diversity and richness of civilization and cultures which constitute the common heritage of humankind. They don't say races, it's humankind, one species. Affirming further that all doctrines, policies, and practices based on our advocating superiority of peoples or individuals on the basis of national origin, national origin, I think we get it now. Religious, ethnic, or cultural differences are racist, scientifically false, legally invalid, morally condemnable, and socially unjust. We're affirming that indigenous peoples and the exercise of their rights should be free from discrimination of any kind. Concerned that indigenous people have suffered from historic injustices as a result of, inter alia, meaning amongst other things, their colonization and dispossession of their lands, territories, and resources, thus preventing them from exercising, in particular, their right to develop in accordance with their own needs and interests. Now, how many times do we have Moors come here and say, well, what do we do about farming?
Yeah.
Have they read this document? And most of the time when they say that, don't I tell them to read Rights of Indigenous People? Recognizing the urgent need to respect and promote the inherent rights of indigenous peoples, which derive from their political. Now, what does your nationality determine?
Your status.
Your political status. Let me just read that again. Recognizing the urgent need to respect and promote the inherent rights of indigenous peoples, which derive from their political, economic, and social structures, and from their cultures, spiritual traditions, histories, and philosophies, especially their rights to their lands, territories, and resources. So this is the second time they mentioned that, land, territory, resources. Recognizing also the urgent need to respect and promote the rights of indigenous peoples, affirmed in treaties. I'll read that one more time. Recognizing also the urgent need to respect these and promote the rights of indigenous peoples affirmed in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements with states. So again, this is nothing more than saying enforce the Constitution, which the prophet Ben said. So you didn't make nothing new. They're late going to the prophet. Welcoming the fact that indigenous peoples are organizing themselves. Peace. Peace, 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 peace. Listen to this, right? Welcoming the fact that indigenous peoples are organizing themselves for political, social, and cultural advancement and in order to bring to an end all forms of discrimination and oppression wherever they occur. Yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
No, that's the UN when you read it.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Oh, they're reading it into American.
No. I'm reading this one. Can I see that? You want to hit one of the lights? You're sitting at the table with me? Friend?
You're taking notes?
No, he's saying-
I always say that.
Oh, I don't think they can see that on Facebook. It's too bright. I'm using a projector screen, so. Oh, there, wait. That'll work. I think.
I'll look at it and say, anything, so
Oh, I flipped it by accident. I focused it. All right. I don't know if it's going to be inverted or not. All right. Welcoming the fact that indigenous peoples are organizing themselves for political, economic, social, and cultural enhancement, and in order to bring to an end all forms of discrimination and oppression wherever they occur. And we always come together and discuss these things. Our people want to get with it. Convinced that control by indigenous peoples over developments affecting them and their lands, territories, and resources, so this is the third time they mentioned that, will enable them to maintain and strengthen their institutions, cultures, and traditions, and to promote their development in accordance with their aspirations and needs. Recognizing that respect for indigenous knowledge, cultures.
yeah, focus it. She's probably turning right back.
No, she messed it up. She told me not to. Recognizing that respect for indigenous knowledge, cultures, and traditional practices contributes to sustainable and equitable development and proper management of the environment, emphasizing the contribution of the dematerialization of their lands and territories of indigenous peoples to peace, economic and social progress and development, understanding and friendly relations among nations and peoples of the world. That's the fourth time they recognize it in land, territory, and resources. They mentioned it. Recognizing in particular the right of indigenous families and communities to retain shared responsibility for the upbringing, training, education, and well-being of their children, consistent with the rights of the child. Let me read that one more time, because for some reason, our people think that they're owed something and don't have to do anything. Recognizing, in particular, the right of indigenous families and communities to retain shared responsibility for the upbringing, training, education, and well-being of their children. Which means we have an obligation as our people to our people, not just wait on someone else to do it. And our people seriously have a problem when they come to us and say, well, what can the Moors do for me? No, what can you do for you? Help us help you. Because we're all part of this problem. But for some reason, they're waiting for something to happen. Because, they got better things to do with their lives, like complain. Considering that the rights affirmed in treaties, so it's the second time they're referencing treaties, agreements and other constructive arrangements between states and indigenous peoples are, in some situations, matters of international concern, interest, responsibility, and character. They've been violating our treaty, which is a violation of international law. We've also been violating our treaty because we haven't been enforcing it. Considering also that treaties, the third time they mentioned treaties, agreements and other constructive arrangements and the relationship they represent are the basis for a strengthened partnership between indigenous peoples and states. Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1786, 1787. Acknowledging that the Charter of the United Nations, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and their International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the Vienna Declaration on the Program of Action, affirm the fundamental importance of the right of self-determination of all peoples by virtue of which they freely determine their political status. Which what determines your political status? Your nationality, exactly. So this is also the third time they've referenced nationality. In the preamble, they mentioned land, territory, and resources 4 times, treaties 3 times, and self-determination and nationality 3 times. Concerned that the recognition of the rights of indigenous people in this declaration will enhance harmonious and cooperative relationships between the state and indigenous people based on principles of justice. And then they throw on this colored word, democracy, which this ain't no dang on democracy. Respect for human rights, non-discrimination, and good faith. Encouraging states to comply with and effectively implement all their obligations as they apply to indigenous peoples under international instruments, in particular those related to human rights, in consultation and cooperation with peoples concerned. Emphasizing that the United Nations has an important and continuing role to play in promoting and protecting the rights of indigenous peoples. Believing that this declaration is a further important step forward for the recognition, promotion, and protection of the rights and freedoms of indigenous people and in the development of relevant activities of the United Nations system in this field, recognizing and reaffirming that indigenous individuals are entitled without discrimination to all human rights recognized in their international law, and that indigenous peoples possess collective rights which are indispensable for their existence, well-being, and integral development as peoples. Recognizing that the situation of indigenous peoples varies from region to region and from country to country, and that the significance of national, and regional particularities and various historical and cultural backgrounds should be taken into consideration, which is everything that Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought in 1913. Which again, the UN ain't doing nothing new. They're repeating what the Prophet said. Solemnly proclaims the following United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People as a standard of achievement to be pursued in the spirit of partnership and mutual respect. Now let's go to some particular articles. Let me read this and stop messing it up. Check this out. Let's go to Article 8. Pow, pow, pow. Article 8, my favorite number. Wait, let's do Article 6. What did I say? What does Article 6 say?
Every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality.
Can you read that louder, please?
Every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality.
Let me fix the blur on camera. Read that one more time.
Every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality.
So this is the 4th time that the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People talked about nationality. I will do more to talk about. Declare your what?
Nationality.
Because nationality determines your what?
Political status.
Political status, right? And didn't the United Nations talk about indigenous people and their political status? Seems like Moors are ahead of the curveball thanks to their prophet. Now, talking about remedy, let's read Article 8. Indigenous peoples and individuals. Now it says people and individuals because a lot of us are doing this alone. Because our people don't want to get with it. Because they want to be Negro, black, colored, or they want to be dirty Indian sellouts, or they want to be dirty Moors and get in with it and get in sellouts and other dirty Moors and other so-called blacks. So as an individual or a small group of people, we can still enforce this. But if we don't know this, chances are we ain't going to enforce it. So again, indigenous peoples and individuals have the right not to be subjected to forced assimilation or destruction of their culture. Now, what does forced assimilation mean?
Gentrification.
Exactly. Gentrification. Now, what's one of the main things black people complain about? Gentrification. So how come none of the so-called black leaders are telling them this? And why is it that the so-called European state can claim eminent domain over Indian property? But they ain't telling you this. That's forced assimilation. In other words, don't abandon your estate. Stay in your house. Allodial title. Defend what's yours. Number 2, states shall provide effective mechanisms for the prevention of and redress for any action which has the aim or effect of depriving them of their integrity as distinct people or of their cultural values or ethnic identities. Any action which has the aim or effect of dispossessing them of their lands, territories, or resources. Any form of forced population transfer which has the aim or effect of violating or undermining any of their rights. So again, they're talking about gentrification and how they're not supposed to gentrify our communities. But if you ask most of our people where they're from, what do they say? Somewhere else. Therefore, they're admitting that the rights of indigenous people don't apply to them. So they have no rights to complain about what they're saying. Again, in the Bible it says, my people perish by the day for the lack of what? Knowledge. Any form of forced assimilation or integration. Meaning Europeans can't be forced into our communities. But what happens? They get forced in our communities. And then what? We get forced to leave. Any form of propaganda designed to promote or incite racial or ethnic discrimination directed against them. Now, what are they always doing in the media? Just that. What we got here? The remedy. Oh, let's read Article 10 for remedy, not just talking remedy against gentrification, which is what black people complain about all the time. Article 10, huh?
Is it Article 9?
Article 9. Article 9. Indigenous people and individuals have the right to belong to an indigenous community or nation in accordance with the traditions and customs of the community or nation concerned. No discrimination of any kind may arise from the exercise of such a right. Number 10, indigenous people shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories. That sounds like they can't gentrify our communities. That's kind of what this sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's exactly what that sounds like.
So they can't give you whatever you want.
Section 8 housing, right? Kick you out. That's forcibly removed, right? Can't kick you out of that. Section 8. Any manner, as I said, the heights. I was loving all the projects. Any project building can't get kicked out. Any home can't get kicked out. Any apartment can't get kicked out. Is that not what that says? Hold on, wait, let me read it again, make sure I'm reading it right. Indigenous people shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories. Last time I checked, most people are on the land. Even if they're in an apartment complex, that apartment building is on the land. So you can't be removed from that. Doesn't matter what floor you live on. No relocation shall take place without the free, prior, and informed consent of the indigenous people concerned and after agreement on just and fair compensation and where possible with the option of return. Key phrase, consent. Because they tell people to leave, and what do? We leave, not knowing we can get compensated. Not knowing that we're a creditor, so we can say, okay, give me $5 million if you want me to leave. Let's do it real quick. Stacks. But we're always coming from a subservient position. That's part of our problem. What else we got here? Article 15. Oh no, I'm not gonna read that one. Your own.
How about Article 12?
I'm gonna read 18. Oh, okay, Article 12 is a good one.
Number 2?
I'll read 1 and 2. Article 12, Clause 1. Indigenous people have the right to manifest, practice, develop, and teach their spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies. The right to maintain, protect, and have access and privacy to their religious and cultural sites. The right to the use and control of their ceremonial objects, and the right to the repatriation of their human remains. Most of our artifacts are in European museums. How about we get them back, have our own museums, and start making money off of that? States shall seek to enable the access and or repatriation of ceremonial objects and human remains in their possession through fair, transparent, and effective mechanisms developed in conjunction with indigenous people concerned. So all these so-called Kemetic black people see all these Hotep pharaoh tombs of pure gold in these European museums ain't claiming it back. Why? Because they're black, which means what? Civil or mortus, which means what? They have no standing at law, which means what? They basically can't. Because obviously, if I'm a Kemetic Hotep guy, and I see another Kemetic Hotep guy tomb in a museum, I'm gonna go, yo, that's my stuff. But what do? We're only Kemetic Hotep on camera and don't actually do anything. Oh, come join my Kemetic Hotep thing. And don't do anything. Haven't done nothing. Oh, but I talk behind the screen. Oh, cool. How come the people don't know you? How come you're not opening up to the public? How come the public ain't coming in pounding you with questions you can't answer them? Because you're a coward. Anyway, continuing. Number 18. Oh, 14.
I was just reading that.
Indigenous people have the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions, providing education in their own language in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. That's why at House of Ram, I was curtain decked out. Because that's how we used to get down. Indigenous individuals, particularly children, have the right to all levels and forms of education of the state without discrimination. Now, what does that sound like? You got to pay for anything? Cool. Uh-oh. Sounds like reparations to me. Number 3, states shall, in conjunction with indigenous people, take effective measures in order for indigenous individuals, particularly children, including those living outside their communities, to have access, when possible, to an education in their own culture and provided in their own language, meaning taught by their own people, period. That's 18.
Article 15 is
I know.
I mean, all of
good
this is
too.
fire.
Yeah.
All of it is fire. Indigenous people have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect their rights, their representatives chosen by themselves in accordance with their own procedures, as well as to maintain and develop their own indigenous decision-making institutions. What does that mean? That means, in this Moorish town that we've been saying, we have the right to elect amongst ourselves in the state in which we live a public official, which then can go into City Hall and say, you ain't doing this over here. Oh, you about to go build something? Oh, well, that's our land. Go ahead and give us $5 million. Oh, you about to build something over there too? Oh, guess what? That's also our land. Go ahead and give us $5 million. Oh, you thinking about making some new laws for the city or whatever? Well, we got Moors in this area, so we got to set up this table, make sure your laws ain't affecting us. We getting that? Let me read that one more time. Indigenous people have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect their rights through representatives chosen by themselves in accord with their own procedures, as well as to maintain and develop their own indigenous decision-making institutions. This is clear as day to me.
Morristown.
Morristown, elect our own Moorish officials, put them in City Hall, say, hey, city officials, stop speaking to us like this. You ain't doing this, you ain't doing that. This is what's going down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, by the way, Moors ain't paying for no garbage disposal no more. Go ahead and do that for us. Go ahead and discharge that. Since you got rid of equity in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act and the Federal Reserve Bank, go ahead and discharge all of that. So now Moors got free trash service. Oh yeah, by the way, since we have the right to our lands and resources back, which water is a resource, ain't it? Oh, we shouldn't be paying no water and utility bill, huh? Oh, well, guess what else? Guess what else? National Grid. Where is National Grid located? On the land. Electricity is a resource, ain't it? Oh yeah, by the way, Europeans, Moors ain't paying for electricity either. Go ahead and destroy that too. That's what that's saying. Any questions? Are we sure?
Why aren't we doing this?
Why aren't we doing it? Lack of knowledge. Now, if you're talking about us specifically in this room.
Well, not us in this room.
You mean
People that have knowledge and keep saying they're alone, get with the Moors in your community and start clustering together so we can start enforcing this.
Yes. Hold on, look at 19, watch this. States shall consult and cooperate in good faith with indigenous peoples concerned through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent before adopting and implementing legislative or administrative measures that may affect them. What about that says you can vote in their system? Only an idiot would say that, huh? Because let me just think right quick. Let me just do this critical thinking. Critical thinking, right? If my prophet said who looked just like me, right? Looked just like us, brown skin, big nose, big lips. Right? He said Moors were living up and down the Mississippi before any European got here. That means we're at least indigenous, let alone aboriginal. So if the prophet said that means this applies, huh? Okay, so based on that alone, that means we can't vote in their system. That means we have to have our own elections. Oh, I get it. We're a separate nation of people. That's what this is saying. Any dummy saying otherwise is a dummy. And they're lying to your face. Because just like the prophet said, they're trying to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid to cause confusion in the minds of ones that do believe and discredit him and others so that they may take charge of the situation. Follow me to your destruction. That's what they're saying. This is why I said, the prophet says, the Moors are high above on a pinnacle where they might view the destructionists as they fall for the last time in their bones of bleach and the sultry midday sun. Because if you ain't with this, that's where you're going. It's always the ones who don't have the mental fortitude to hold this knowledge and be able to do something with it. They just want surface level stuff because it goes too deep. They can't handle the depths of their own mind. So don't follow them anywhere because they can't even deal with what's in their head. What makes you think they're going to take you somewhere? They can't even tie the shoe. You want them to drive a
They'll
bus?
take you somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Onto that bus with them.
The short bus. All right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm not sorry. I apologize. Article 20. Indigenous people have the right to maintain and develop their political, economic, and social systems or institutions to be secure in the enjoyment of their own means of substance and development, and to engage freely in all their traditional and other economic activities. Relate that to Title 12, subsection 411 of the United States Code, would say they are obligated to pay for everything. Yes, ma'am.
Somebody said this document wasn't law because I would love to use it, but would it stand in the courts?
I'm not laughing at you. Please don't think I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at the statement. What is law? Because last time I checked, I self-law and master. Last time I checked, in the Circle 7 that the prophet brought said, the law conformeth to your will. So by you saying it ain't law, then you said it ain't.
United Nations not in for nothing either. Can you repeat that code?
Oh, United States Code, Title 12, subsection 411, which states that the obligation of the Federal Reserve note belongs to the United States because the United States Treasury Department prints the Federal Reserve notes for the Federal Reserve Bank. So since they are responsible for it and they got rid of equity, they take on all of the debts associated with it because it's supposed to be backed by something tangible. It's not backed by anything tangible. So they take on all the debt because the word obligation means debt. Clause 2, indigenous people deprived of their means of substance and development are entitled to just and fair redress. Any questions on that? Oh, cool. 21. Indigenous people have the right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including inter alia, which means amongst other things, in areas of education, employment, which we trying to be no employees, we're trying to be independent contractors. Vocational training, you know what vocational training is, right? What is it?
Trained.
Yes, so being trained to do something. So a trade, yes. And retraining, meaning if you already have a trade and you just need retraining. Housing. Housing. I.e. getting our family out of Section 8. Getting our family out of the projects. That's improvement of their housing. Getting them out of that negative environment. Sanitation, health, and social security. What is social security? The crowd answers correctly, giving me the exact right answer.
Your people banding together to create security amongst each other.
Banding together to create security amongst each other. Can you give me an example of that?
If somebody's taking your house or somebody's threatening your business, your way of life, your people are gonna help you protect that.
Give me another example.
Your people are gonna buy from you to help you create security.
Yes.
Exclusively, you're doing commerce and business in your own community.
Yeah. Anyone else have any other ideas on what social security is besides the few that she gets? I mean, she kind of hit the nail on all the heads. Trust.
Has to do with your credit too.
People belong to the same trust and securing their things or possessions.
Yes.
Through the society.
So when she said if someone's house is being threatened to be taken and the people stand with you, that's a trust. You trusted us that you ain't gonna be there alone. We're gonna be standing next to you. That's the trust in action. Because remember, the trust isn't the piece of paper, the trust is the people. The minds of the people. You know what I'm saying? Because we can put on paper that, your assets are protected in my trust. And then if someone tries to foreclose on your house and then I ain't there with you, then obviously your assets ain't protected in my trust. You know what I'm saying?
You know
what? I don't see what you're saying. Yes.
It's there's a lot of it seems like fear in the conversation. Somebody says Social Security is being secure in your persons, and we are far from secure, and we are at the mercy of the foreigners. We have to stop thinking like this. This is exactly, let's create social security amongst ourselves.
Did you watch the one last night?
Can I just add in this basic common sense thing? You would not be on the internet if you're not securing your life. You'd be working on securing your life. So you can't say you obviously can't say that if you're online. People who are like not securing their life, they're not online. They're not. They're just not. understand what I'm saying? I mean, we can get personal. We can talk about our spending habits, not the European spending habits, our spending habits, our priorities.
Mm-hmm.
How many so-called black family members do we know kick their children out as soon as they turn 18? That's not the European doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Now that child has no security because the parent did that. What does that say about Europeans? Nothing. Those are our actions. So let's be honest. I know a few family members that got kicked out of the house when they were 18.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky my mother didn't do that with me. And my mother ain't European, so, and I'm pretty sure our people's moms ain't European because they're Asiatic. So who you blaming?
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest. So rethink that statement. And I'm not saying that might not. I'm not refuting that may not be true with you. It may be true with you, but if you weren't secure, you wouldn't be on the internet right now. You wouldn't have. I mean, why would you be at the library? I mean, they might be at the library, public library, but why would you be there instead of finding security? Like house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. States shall take effective measures and, where appropriate, special measures, which that's telling you what? It's two distinct things, right? States shall take effective measures. That's one thing. Effective measures sounds like they'll try to do something, right? And where appropriate, special measures, meaning they'll take over something. They'll take the responsibility for something. Right? Everyone clear on that?
Mm-hmm.
States shall take effective measures where appropriate, and where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their, meaning our indigenous people, economic and social conditions, meaning what? Who can explain that sentence? Not you, Janae.
Read it one more time.
States shall take effective measures, and where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions. When they say they're talking about indigenous people, they're talking about us.
Maybe like the states moving people out of the projects, right?
That can be an example of it, yes.
Reparations.
Yes. Can both of you be more specific if you can?
Moving on up. No, I'm just kidding.
To the east side?
To the east side.
More than just quote unquote affirmative action.
More than just quote unquote affirmative action. Can you give me an example of what affirmative action is, and give me an example of what more than that is?
Affirmative action is supposed to be a chance for you to make it into the rat race with the Europeans.
Give me a specific example, like what do they do? Like, give me a policy, something.
I'd have to Google a policy. I don't have a policy in but
Like having to hire a certain amount of minorities
right,
to fill a quota.
That's specific. That's all that's for. So that's a quote unquote affirmative action. What can they do more than just that, based on what you said? Like, what would be more than that in harmony with this?
If there was a group of 40 nationalized Moors with, let's say, an elected official, or 2 or 3, they would then go and put the de facto on notice saying that we're going to claim a piece of land. We're going to now command that you, who's building housing, to build it on our property, because that's a form of reparation. So
yes.
This is, we're gonna need housing, we're gonna need clean water, electric. So these are our demands, and this is what you're going to do in this particular area.
Yes. So you're talking about us making specific demands, and it says that they shall take effective measures and where appropriate special measures to ensure continuing improvement, meaning they're going to build the things for us and pay for it. That's exactly what you said. That's a perfect example. Do you have something else?
And if they're going to put their businesses on our land, make it a point to hire people.
Or pay a tax.
Mm-hmm.
Great examples. Continuing. 25. Article 25.
Is this the rights of indigenous people? Or
Yes,
I
it is.
missed it.
Now, this is rights of indigenous people. Article 25. Indigenous people have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationship with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas and other resources, and to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in this regard. Pay attention to that last part. Uphold our responsibility to the future generations so that we claim something not for ourselves, for our nation, period. What is one of the first things Fidel Castro did for the Cubans? He gave the farmland back to the people. What else was the other thing that he did? He made education pretty much very, very cheap or free for women. That's nationalizing. That's him exercising the rights of indigenous people. He didn't wait for someone to say, oh, we adopt this policy. No, the Cubans enforced it, period. Period. That's it. That's the end of it. Say again?
It wasn't on CNN, ABC,
Nah.
to let the people know.
No. They said Cuba for Cubans. That's what they said. They didn't say, well, Cuba for Cubans only if someone adopts a policy. It's BS. Oh, Cuba for Cubans, but you know, the UN didn't say that rights of indigenous people is law, so we can't enforce our rights. Get out of here with that BS. Go home. Go to the state where the prophet found you. Go back. Because you missed a few steps. Leave. You know what I'm saying? Everyone tracking.
Yes.
Great. (26) deals with housing again. Indigenous people have the right to the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. What are some of the things you see in that you've heard me specifically talk about? Yes.
I like,
Are you answering my question or?
go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead.
We talk about this all the time, but it's being specific about whether you own it, whether you occupy it, or you've acquired it.
Mm-hmm.
So once you claim your land, or
Exactly. The right to the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, because a lot of our people have families who own certain properties, like some of the women in class last night were bringing that up, how they have family members who own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Occupied or otherwise used, something that we've used before, or acquired, reversion, quitclaim, adverse possession, right of reversion. That's what that's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, indigenous people have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands, territories, and resources that they possess by reason of traditional ownership, chain of title, passing down by descendability, your heirs, or other traditional occupation or use, as well as those which they have otherwise acquired, quitclaimed, adverse possession, allodial title. States shall give legal recognition. So when I show you that allodial title stamped by the Secretary of State, is that or is that not legal recognition? States shall give legal recognition and protection to these lands, territories, and resources, which means what? Gina Raimondo and the gang, Nelly Gorbea, Georgia Lorza, all the people of city council, all of the people of the General Assembly, they are responsible for protecting what we claim. Yes.
For example, let's say this area, we go to Gina and everyone else, and we demand that your policy enforcers, we want them to be unarmed, but we want them to specifically be an aid to our, I don't know if
Yes.
that makes sense.
Oh, yes.
Do the traffic, help this old lady cross the street. I don't want you to be armed though.
Yeah.
Because they have the numbers, and,
Yes.
we need the people to assist.
Yes.
Because
So I remember I can't remember when. I don't think you were there that class, but I read my second book where it talked about forms of reparations, how it's civilian control of the military and police forces. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
Yes, that's what we're supposed to be
Okay.
doing. Now look, and remember when the Prophet was around in the city of Chicago alone, he had 3,000 Moors dealing with the city. Because if you talk about, the city, the like province police, that's municipal. But then you reference talking to Gina Raimondo, that would be the state police. We would need a lot more people to get to that level. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying we need a lot more people in this area to get to that level in this area. But we can use what the Prophet did in Chicago. He's been doing that. So don't think that this is out of reach, because he started officially with the Old Canaanite Temple in 1913. Now, how many years is it between 1913 and 1928? 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. That's 15. So in 15 years, you got 3,000 people in Chicago alone, and they were getting things done. Then, once he passed away, riots broke out, wars broke off because people were fighting for power, etc., etc., etc. But if we focus on what he did, this is possible.
Yes,
Everything that we're saying is possible because he already did it.
very good. And the blueprint.
Yeah. He did all the grunt work so we can put our feet up and relax and mimic what he did. I mean, actually, it's not really relaxing, but in theory.
Light as a feather.
Yeah, in theory, we should just knock on Gina Raimoto's door because she's supposed to be a public servant and say, this is what we want. And she's supposed to do it once she sees that brown skin. Article 28, indigenous people have the right to redress by means that can include restitution, or, when this is not possible, just, fair, and equitable compensation for the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used, and which have been confiscated, taken, occupied, used, or damaged without their free, prior, and informed consent. Meaning, if these Europeans gentrify another Moorish community that they call themselves black, we have the right to redress and go back into that community that they fixed up for us, and all those Europeans have to leave. But if we don't know this and we don't enforce this, then what happens? Absolutely nothing happens. The situation stays the same. They just gentrify. We complain, and then another black activist says, call it rights and call it stuff, and then nothing happens again. Then we see another Uncle Tom taking another picture with so-called Donald Trump. We see another Uncle Tom claiming to be Indian saying indigenous rights, taking another picture with, it's the same thing. Until we as a people say none of that BS, which we know is BS. This is what's going to happen. Period. And then amongst our own people, we have the right, oh, you got an objection? Quick slaps. Shut up. Which we need to be policing our own. As an example, in China, the Chinese people aren't allowed to speak against their government. Some people think, oh, that's oppression. No. Because of how you look at it. If they're speaking in your interest and you're speaking against them, you deserve to be slapped.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So if the Moors are saying these are all rights, and our people like, no, you're not, you do what the prophet thought, they deserve to be slapped so hard into next week. You know what I'm saying? That's why a policy like that in China exists, not because they're suppressing their people. Everyone following. My point in that statement was we need to enforce our own law and hold our people accountable to our law. The problem is we have not been doing that. We've been abiding by European colonial Christian black codes laws and holding our people to that standard. Like, oh, black people always late. Why are you proud of that? Why are we proud of that? That's crazy. You're never on time. Even though time is a construct, whatever, right? But if we make plans to do something and you ain't there, that's a problem. Every time you go to work, you're on time. So why is it that when it comes to our functions, you can't be on time? You know what I'm saying? That might sound like a little thing, like, oh, don't worry, you know. That's huge.
You're breaking
Time
trust.
is money.
How are you reliable if you're not on time?
Yeah,
I don't depend on you to show up for me when I have to go to court
yeah.
or when somebody's coming to take something from me.
Because you're gonna be late.
I don't have any trust. There's no trust in you.
It does affect your credit. It affects our reputation as a people. That's our credit. So we're known for being late, and we're proud of that. Why? Oh, you know, split black people time. Why? Why are you laughing at that? That's not a prideful thing to say. Don't think that's off topic. Please don't. Clause 2. Unless otherwise freely agreed upon by the people concerned, compensation shall take the forms of land, territories, and resources equal in quality, size, and legal status, or monetary compensation, or other appropriate redress, which means what? If your family owns 9.8 acres, right? If Europeans want to claim it, they have to give you 9.8 acres somewhere else, or a piece of property with the same value. So if you got a lake on your area and they're trying to do whatever in that area, and you agree, all right, go find me another estate just like this. Oh yeah, go ahead and build my house up. The rooms, everything's the same. Go ahead and do that. That's our power. But what do we want to do instead? We all want to be rappers, and we all want to be Instagram models. And if it's none of that, we join their military, or we join their police force, or we work in their job industry, or we become one of their politicians, or we become one of their farmers, or we become one of their cash register employees, or we become one of their secretaries, we become one of their city hall officials, we become one of their whatever, one of their something else, one of their another thing. What are we doing for ourselves? Name one thing.
Someone on our spare, hopefully.
That's what Moors are doing. That's what active Moors are doing. Other than that, what are our people doing?
Waiting for somebody to save them.
So they're not doing anything for themselves. They're just playing. Ooh. Stay stuck. You know, not to make this about me or anything, but you know when people message me, oh, I'm so proud of what you're doing out here. Like people want to know, like, why aren't you showing up? What do you mean you're so proud? You ain't proud of me. You just want to say. I don't even understand why you're talking to me for. Like, don't talk to me. Don't. Like you see what we're doing, or at least you say you see what I'm doing, and you ain't showing up. Don't talk to me. What is there to talk about? Oh, you're doing a good job. Oh, so
I need help.
You're basically watching a basketball game and you're on a team and you're like, I ain't getting in, but that one person on this 5-man team is doing great, and I'm supposed to be dribbling and passing the ball and stuff, but I'm doing none of that. I'm just gonna sit and let this person carry me, even though that person can't carry me because it's impossible. you get what I'm saying? Our people deserve quick slaps. Quick slaps.
Before a quick rant.
Before a quick rant, exactly. In the military, right? If we're on a hike, all of us got 90-pound packs, right? You would get laughed at if you couldn't carry your pack. Then someone would embarrass you and say, give your pack to him. And you'd be looked at like a coward. I mean, we would use more vulgar language than that.
Because you're dainty.
But you would be all types of
behind.
All types of weak, cowards, spineless individuals because you can't carry your own weight. Our people need that reality check. Get out of my face with compliments. What are you doing? Compliments are welcome. That's not, I'm not trying to say don't. don't do that. I'm saying the value of you carrying your own weight means way more to me than thank you. Even though thank you, that's the polite thing to say. And gratitude is very important. Carry your own weight.
Don't just look for the sideline.
Yeah. And I used to kind of like that in the military. Because I would carry other people's packs. Like, you're weak. And that's like a prideful thing to be able to do. You're weak. Go do the desk job. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a desk job. But in that military environment, you always kind of want to be, the one in the field doing the work because, you get that status. You get that status. You know what I mean?
Carrying out a dead
Go sit
weight.
at company office and sit at the desk. That's what
Awesome.
That's what he used to say. Ooh, that makes me happy.
Could you imagine hiking up a mountain? Somebody get this guy a desk.
Take his pack. Give him
Take his shoes off, take his boots off, take his boot bands off, and give him a desk. But
turn in your fence.
It's about to-
buttons.
exactly, turn in your car and buttons, see some of your turban and fez, return to the proper boundary. But I'm not saying there's anything wrong with administrative jobs because administrative jobs or administrative positions in this movement is well needed.
Mhm.
But that's you carrying your own weight.
You're still helping.
Yes. So don't misinterpret what I was trying to say, my point. Administrative functioning is crucial. Because without organization, it's just, okay, now what? Well, I don't know where we left off because no one wrote anything down.
Hold on.
Yes.
It was about carrying your own weight. Because if you read the comment section, let's put that into practice.
All right. Where was I?
He's like, let me skim through this real quick.
Where was I? I was laughing at these cowards and these weaklings. That's it. Read the rest on your own. That's just the introduction to what our rights are. And then again, when you read the Inter-American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, the Inter-Americans are the Brazilians, the Haitians, our people love Haitians, the Jamaicans, our people act like they're Jamaican all the time.
Just it done.
The Mexicans, the Cubans, the Chileans, the Nicaraguans, all the Muslims that the Prophet said were Muslims, all these people agree that those who embody historical continuity with territories that existed prior to the conquest of their lands are Europeans, and those who were brought involuntarily to the New World are considered indigenous people. How is that possible, Jamal? I don't get it. Well, the prophet said the dominion of Africa is Egypt, west, across the Atlantic River, even North, South, and Central America. It's one landmass. So of course you're indigenous here. That's how we teach our people. Any question?
No.
When do we get started?
Well, we start by teaching our people this to give them an interest in themselves and the land at their feet. Because our people wouldn't think to claim the land at their feet because they're taught by the Europeans that they're from Africa. But they're also taught that Africa is somewhere else. Africa is part of North America. That's how we can start. I mean, some people don't need to be started on that level. Some people already get it. Because most of us, like if you do any honest research in our family, most of us will find someone, at least from so-called, Morocco, the continent of North America. Most of us will find roots in the South, so-called Mississippi area, which is really the Nile, which is the Anyanwea of the Cherokee, right? So most of us will say, I got Indian in my family, trying to make an honest connection here. But then you find out that the Olmecs are Moors, the Olmecs are all the Anyanwea, blah, blah, blah. So you don't have to start at zero with everyone, because some people already study on their own because they're already honestly trying to find a solution. But for others, you got to start at zero. But be careful because they'll listen. Oh yeah, this sounds good. They'll walk around and say, this person got it, and they do nothing to help. And I'm only saying that from experience. Great question. Any other questions? How do you propose we start?
Move here. Yeah.
Morristown?
Yeah, Morristown.
Anyone want to go on camera and let the people know the importance of a Morristown? Besides me?
Ooh, Ellie just moved here.
Oh!
I sure did.
Yeah.
Ellie!
That's where I'm
Come on down and let people know your face.
Do this.
Wait, hold on. Can we just give a shout out to Ellie? We didn't have IDs.
Put his face, come on, blast.
We didn't have IDs,
Sit, King.
right? And we were waiting for some time to try to get them. And this man brought an ID machine, figured out how to make a template, and made the Moors in this group IDs.
His own.
Sat up for days with no sleep.
His own money.
If nobody's gonna do it, I'll do it myself.
Donate.
His own money.
Yep, he didn't wait for nobody. He didn't cry out for help.
I kind of just watched.
Yeah, we helped very little. You're being humble.
In the area.
We enabled you.
Yeah.
We supported you.
So
Support us.
here's an example of a Moor
Thank you.
who's seen something lacking, and he was like, "Damn."
See, you're leaving.
I know, hold
You
on.
moved
You
here.
moved here. It's important.
You in my queue.
Because you were driving here 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
Hours and 45.
2 hours of
2
traffic
hours, yes.
every week on
Mhm.
Saturdays to be here, which is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Donated your.
Exodus.
Mhm.
You guys actually understand.
But you
Because you mean a lot to us. Because you
You're an asset.
yeah you put in so much work and you didn't cry about what we didn't have. You made it, and that's like what we're asking for is people to come and
And
participate.
fill the voids.
Yeah, I hate the fact that people, they say things and they don't do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally the hunger to do right by your own and your own family and others that you see that are struggling, why not do what needs to be done?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're kind of babies in a mindset like
Mhm.
like we could say, oh, this is very bad, and then you go home, turn on the heat, put something in the microwave, and eat something and watch TV and be like, okay, everything's fine.
Comfortable,
Everything's fine.
warm in your bed.
Mhm.
You play your
A lot of you who are
PlayStation.
complaining, you're very comfortable, even though you're
Yeah,
living.
we're lazy.
Even though we're living, some of us are living in Section 8 and may not have the best
Mhm.
ways to provide for ourselves, but
We
third
still
world-
have 'em,
Third world.
yeah.
It's not.
I've been to countries where like people have to build a shack to live in and have no running water and no heat or electricity, and they still they're still living life happy and
Happy.
Yeah,
because they're free.
as a community, like you'll go down the block and go buy first something from someone that looks like you.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone that looks like you go and support them. So it's very natural.
Mhm.
For me, at least, or other people who's from the islands, we like to support each other.
Mhm.
We don't have the means because the colonists are over here. This is Europe to us. This is like European territory, and then we just allow them to do whatever they want at any time, and we just complain and march.
Yeah.
Waste our energy by walking in a circle.
It's amazing. I've met people in other countries that when they buy something cold because they don't have electricity or a fridge, they have to buy a small bag of ice to go along with it, just to have it for a few hours stored till they cook it, and they complain a lot less than us.
We love to.
It's insane.
And I picked up on the complaining. So if we had to kill pigs that had pizza, and if you claim this is your land, show that it was your land by supporting your people, put in the time, effort, or whatever is on your heart to do. And let's get it done because I'm tired.
You definitely only get the respect that you give yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're saying this can't be done, we can't do
You
it,
gotta wait for some
yeah.
European to approve a policy.
it's not gonna happen.
Crazy. That's crazy talk.
Act like if you're the Lord of the land, act like it.
So, just to talk about what he said and bring it to what the prophet said. He said, if you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Temple of America and become part of this divine movement. Then you will have power to redeem your race because you will know who you are, who you fall from his word. Because where there is unity, there is strength. Together we stand, divided we fall. Come, good people, because I, the prophet, said to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you have now, need every one of you who think your condition can be better. This is a field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take your place in the affairs of men. He's seen a void. He filled it. He's good at that kind of stuff. He took his place amongst our affairs of thinkers, because he had to think for he was up for 2 days doing this.
3.
Yeah,
Actually, it was in separate.
one day it was 2 days.
Uh-huh.
Well, one
time.
session it was 2 days. Then the other session it was 3 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is a field open to all strong men and women who think that their condition can be better.
This man's computer died before his will.
Yes.
His hard drive crashed before his will crashed.
Carrying his own weight and then some.
And he still wasn't complaining and still made the IDs.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that's normal.
Right. You didn't stop because you were grumpy. You didn't give up.
If the Europeans and other nations are helping me, why not you? He's Haitian.
Mhm.
Yes. Haiti.
So- You're Haitian. So you already know you already know your nationality. You already know it. You get it. Haitian. You already got it. Pow. And you're still helping the Moors because we're family.
Mhm.
But the blacks, they want to act Haitian and act Jamaican and act like they're from the islands, but they don't want to help their own people.
Because they want to walk into
They've
an already
never even been
established
to the islands, first of all.
I know.
You have to go to the islands in order to see what he's talking about. If you've never been, it's just hearsay.
You don't have the mentality
You have to literally
understand.
go and be like, oh my God, I could live here. When you get that mentality, you're like, oh my, you don't want to go back.
Then maybe you can fake that.
I can just grab seashells on the beach and sell them
Yeah.
to the people who are visiting.
Yeah.
Things like that. There's ways to live without.
The European.
Once you live here, then you're like, oh, there's a mattress
Mm-hmm.
off the floor. There's a box spring too.
Yeah.
Wait, and there's rails. So it's an elevation. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And they expect here.
Mhm.
That's what it is. They expect. Out there, there's no expectations.
So stop faking like
There's
you're
nothing there
Haitian.
to expect.
Stop faking like you're Haitian. Stop faking those fake accents just because you got locks. Your skin. Not you. No, not
This
you.
is mine.
Y'all know exactly who I'm talking about. Our people fake that Jamaican stuff all the time.
They fake the locks, first of all.
Faux locks?
Yeah, faux locks.
That's real.
That it's a
Yeah.
real thing.
You didn't know faux locks is a real thing?
No.
It's
You
real.
don't have the patience to wait 10 years.
Yeah.
Go to the
No,
salon,
they
faux
make-
locks.
You know what's crazy? They make the ones with the sleeve now. You just pull your hair through with
Yes.
a crochet thing and you
And it's on.
done.
You're done.
Officially a rust. It's crazy.
What is
It
that?
looks like this, but it's
Yeah.
not dreads. It's fake dreads.
Yeah, you literally just pull your hair down a sleeve and it's set.
Her mind is boss.
I know.
I don't
Your mind is
understand.
blown. She's like, what do you mean?
She's like, I have to see this technology.
And you know what's funny? It's called faux locks, but most people don't know that faux means fake.
Right. They think it's a French fancy word.
Yeah.
I got faux locks.
Yeah, no, it's fake.
It's fake.
That's
But
like
like,
It's fake.
And then
They
they're like,
don't-
no, it's faux locks.
Yeah.
What?
Like, you go and get your hair twisted?
No.
We wish
I
it
was just not.
You see that thing that she's crocheting with?
Yes.
Yeah, but
You use that and pull your hair
And you use
through
this
a
needle.
thing and it's done.
Right.
The dread is already pre-made.
The dreads are pre-made.
It's microwave dreads.
Right.
And they're doing a big Jamaican accent.
Mhm.
You're good to go.
and they listen to reggae.
You're good to go.
Oh, people are phonies. I mean, that's why they call colored people. But anyway,
I'm
There
gonna
you go.
exit screen.
no, stay. No.
Exit stage left.
Look, he's like slowly get up.
He's like,
Nobody
"Fine."
on the
Guys,
No one ever
Thanks
wants to
again,
do this.
Ellie.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for taking your affairs amongst the affairs of men. Taking your affairs amongst the affairs of men. So yes, that's the basically introduction to the rights of indigenous people. Share that with your people, which is really our people. Show them the Inter-American Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, Article 1, which says that they are indigenous, that they can relate to this. The problem is we have disassociation or cognitive dissonance. And it's funny when people try to act smart and they can't say that word. It's hilarious to me. Cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance.
They can't connect mentally to the land because we were taught that we're from somewhere else and that we are somewhere else.
Mhm.
Also, when we see architecture with Moorish features and they got a fezan or a turban, we don't relate to that because we've been taught that we're Christians. And then when we do go towards Islam, it's a dogmatic version, and we call ourselves Black Muslims, which is also all color, because we're suffering from that disconnect. The disconnect is from the science. In order to get to that science, you have to realign yourself with nature. That's religion. And it starts with your breathing, which is your spirit, which is your breath. So you get a full cycle of oxygen from your lungs into the bronchi, onto your blood cells, into your brain for proper brain function. That's what spirituality is. Because we get messages from the ethers through our things like the hair and our skin. In order to receive those messages properly, there can't be any blockages. So you have to learn how to breathe properly. Which is
Breathe
also
properly and
why
change your diet.
when Muslims pray, when they bow, that's to stretch their spine, because we have major arteries that go up our spine that feeds the blood to our brain. We're not just bowing for nothing. It's yoga. That's the disconnect. We don't know any of that science. So we just think, oh, you gotta bow down, look at the ground, and kiss a carpet. That's not what you're doing. You're stretching your spine. Like the Prophet said, upright, independent, and fearless. That's your spine. That's why in the military they teach us to sit a certain way. Because it's for proper blood flow to the brain. Because the universe is what?
Mental.
Mental. It's learning. Genius. We got genius over here. How old are you?
All 15.
15. He's sunning y'all. 15 years old. Sunning you.
So,
That's my day.
Sit down. Any questions? Any questions on the rights of indigenous people?
just a comment. I love the fact that I forget their affiliation, Israelites for Humanity or whatever. The Israelites group, they love religion, but the thing that I admire about them is that they will meet up and support each other, their brothers.
Yes.
Because I was moving with one of my brothers, helping him move, and he called like 7 of his brothers, and they all came with their to help him move all this stuff from his house. And then my other brother moved all this stuff from his house. It's like 7 of them came, and myself included. They could call, and then everyone will be there.
Nationhood.
And why aren't we as Moors? Because I've only been sort of studying and learning about Moorish history about 7 months, and I've never seen anything as far as a group of Moors actually actively demanding and going someplace that putting someone on notice for anything or gathering to do actual tangible things versus just like theoretical.
Now you've seen
blah,
us
blah, blah.
implement those things.
Yes.
The problem is some people stop showing up. So now our voice got from here to here. And the less people that, the more people leave, it just goes boom, boom. Then we're back to where we started. That's the problem. At least with the Israelites, they have dogma that kind of keeps them there.
Yeah, the dogma is like feeding their
Yeah,
souls.
yeah. It's that opioid. But with more science, you have to be able to think for yourself. And our people aren't used to that, so they get intimidated. Because now they're realizing that I have to pay for my actions, good or bad. They'd rather be in that situation where it doesn't matter what I do. They can reject, what they receive negatively and blame it on someone else instead of taking responsibility. So I'm not saying, the group of Israelites that are like that. I'm saying I've seen a few Israelites and they're very dogmatic.
Oh,
Yeah, but they call it religion, but it's not religion, it's dogma. Just like with some of these imams out here, they say, in order to be part of the mosque, you gotta submit that there's only one universal Allah and man is not even close to Allah, and meaning they're the medium between you and Allah. So they maintain that position of power.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they make you submit to that.
Yeah.
Just like in the Masonic Lodge, you got to submit to Jesus Christ because they're getting you to submit to someone who ain't alive, so that you automatically submit to them because they make it seem like they have some connection with that person who ain't here. That's dogma because we all have that connection. It's right here.
yeah.
But all we can do with that, because we obviously we end up in a different place.
Yeah.
Is observe the qualities that we could use that we could adopt by their examples, like showing up for each other and being brothers and sisters and
If you've done
getting together.
on accord with people.
Yep, just continue to do it.
It's just not as large as some of these other communities because we're literally the first Moors out here since our ancestors had stuff on lock. We're literally the ones. So don't ever forget that. Like we're it.
I have to remember too in a family, I'm like, if I call my family and I'm like, I want y'all to come do this, they're gonna come. Only because I'm telling them. I'm not asking them. And it's me. If it was one of my sisters, they may be like,
because you built credit.
But I don't play. So I'm like, you better be here. You better make sure. You better, and they'll do it. So it's about, you always have to have that one person who can.
With credit to back you up to say, show up for this because this is important.
Be there or be square. Be there or be square.
Exactly.
That's how we get down around here.
Yep.
That's hashtag active more saying.
No, active more is be there and be on your square.
Hello. On time.
All right. Any other questions on the rights of Indigenous people? None. Any suggestions on how we can be more effective in our community? Let's say during the springtime.
Yes.
We need to plant.
Community outreach.
So
I think we need to go get in the streets and talk to people.
Yes, we started doing that when it was summer. It's getting cold now. What I was thinking, which made me push my third book, is printing excerpts from my books and going to high schools and handing them out. Which we can start doing that. I mean, there's other things we can do. That was just an idea. Another idea I had was, excuse me, students. Have you heard about the Southside Community Land Trust?
Is that over there by like Elmwood or?
Yeah.
I think I heard something about that on the news.
There's a bunch of Europeans
Yeah.
who made a house in office space.
Yeah.
Entire house.
Yeah.
Multifamily. That's their office. Has a little plot of farmland where they grow vegetables and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Their mission is to help minorities, blacks, and veterans get farmland. The problem is those minorities, blacks, and some of these veterans are indigenous people. So when they go to these places, they have to use a social and they get paid like that. Then they also offer another program where those minorities and blacks can purchase farmland from the Europeans and pay the Europeans.
But they shouldn't be
Right.
doing it that way. because
Yes.
they're indigenous people.
Exactly. That's where we come into play and correct some of their policies. So that's something that we can actually implement. Because I was part of that program before I realized I'm a Moor. And they try to offer me a plot of land that I would have to farm and then pay them a percentage. I was like, what?
Since they are holding the resources,
Yeah.
we can just show up and say, well, here's all this, your laws.
Yeah.
And especially here's Gina Raimondo's executive order to
On
support diversity.
Exactly.
And let's enforce it.
The issue remains.
We need more
We
to
need
show
more
up.
People.
Yep.
Yes.
Faithful people.
Mhm.
Not just anyone showing up, because we already know what happens with that. Anyone can't just show up.
Mm.
We need faithful people. Not faithful to me. Don't think I'm saying be faithful to me.
No,
at
faithful
all.
to your own
Faithful to each
freedom.
And to the cause.
Faithful to the cause,
Yes.
period.
Mhm.
Exactly. The Moorish Divine Master Movement. Don't, not me. I'm just a guy.
That's your personal business.
You know what? Every war will come to the conclusion, in order to reach their own salvation, they need to reach the people's salvation.
Yeah.
We need each other.
Well, yes and no, yes. So no, not no, yes. Save yourself first. Then get with a bunch of people
Mhm.
who save themselves mentally and help save each other.
It's just like you can't love another unless you love yourself. It's the
Yes.
same concept.
I love that. Yo, smart. Excuse me, intelligent.
Dumb idea.
It's more like the plane. You can't help someone next to you until you put the mask on yourself.
Yeah.
But you want everyone in the plane to have a
And
mask on,
yeah.
period,
Yeah.
before they think they can go and help another plane
Yes.
coming down.
Yeah, as far as outreaching to youths and women, I would recommend, as far as if there's any boys and girls clubs or after school programs, they may be going into college or applying, because that's where I used to go to a lot of boys and girls clubs when I was younger. So I would get mentors, and then I would do, for example, like a mock trial. Let's learn about law. I mean real law. So if there's children there who want to get, let's say, an AP credit, if you learn these maxims of law, how to do a mock trial, and then implementing actual history into that. I'm not sure if the community center person who's controlling it would allow us to tutor
That's always the issue.
the youth to actually learn law or history, because we're not dogmatically saying.
Well, they would probably, the first thing they would want to, do you have a license?
Yeah, do you have
Do
a
you have
license?
permission
Do you have
to-
501c3? Do you have EIN?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's always going to be a situation, but those are problems
I
that
was
we do.
thinking it too, 'cause
Those things
not necessarily, it depends on the schools.
Yeah, yeah.
Some schools want that information, some schools have it where they tell the kids, Friday, we're gonna have this day where your parents or your family members could come in and talk to the class about anything they want to. And they'll give you like 5-10 minutes, somebody else 10 minutes, and they don't have any degrees, anything like that. They're just talking to the kids, or they even may show them how to do something.
That sounds
You know,
perfect. Now,
yeah.
can we do that for 12th graders? Or does the age matter?
Yeah, 12th, 11th graders, let's say we're doing math studies, because I went to George Washington Carver Center, which was a 501c3, but they would let other people from the community come in. Let's say they want to play pool, and that location, they would have a professional who knows how to play pool. He would volunteer his time and teach the youth that. And the dance group.
I hear what you're saying.
Does the age matter if
Oh,
we could just give the seed? Because they're going to present it to their mothers.
True. That's if they remember.
If we could get them at an age of interest, at least, I'm not talking about like third graders, maybe at least middle school.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw Black's Law Dictionary, because we were doing a mock trial, and my mentor was like, read what black means, and he was giving me the eye. Like, you know what this means? Look at the Black's Law Dictionary and read all these. What's a plaintiff? What's a and such. So we're able to learn jurisdiction and play a role, because I was really quiet. So it forced me to talk and be in front of people and then compete.
So this sounds like a great idea happening. Who wants to spearhead this idea? And we all go to it.
If it works, it works. Because I wouldn't mind doing like a mock trial thing for 11 and 12 years.
Is that what you want? The mock trial? I mean,
It's,
this is so many things.
amongst other things.
Yeah, amongst other things.
Mock trial is one of the things that you
So who wants to spearhead this? I'll ask it again. Any volunteers?
if it makes sense, I mean, amongst everyone, then if we're gonna start approaching, then I would like to be part of it or spearhead that. Or
You've been
Yeah.
talking about this for a
Yeah.
while
Then
too.
you will get the information about what's required.
Because the
what's
trial is gonna be
expected.
interesting, especially when the children already know certain things that they see on TV or someone they know with law, and then you're hitting them with, well, this is, they're like, wait a minute.
Man, if
And it's gonna be
We-
their interest.
hold on, we're gonna give away the sauce now. We gotta sign out.
Oh.
We gotta sign out.
I'm just saying, we ain't just talking around here.
And
We're hashtag implementing plans.
you're just talking about around these parts.
So, like the prophet said,
If you're interested in joining us,
if you're part of some Moors who ain't doing nothing, get out from under them. Find some Moors who are doing good and help them do more good. Son in them. With that, I say peace to both camps.